removing the perspective that we used to have about vocational training in this country is probably the most important thing to do to save the US job.
We are building learning profiles of students and then letting that inform the pedagogy, not the other way around.
One size does not fit all. Everyone has a different life, different expectations, and different ways of learning.
We need to find career happiness to have a better life.
Welcome to Better Careers, Better Lives, a show that features leaders in education, technology, and the skilled trade industries, and how they are making an impact in their respective fields by providing pathways to better careers and better lives. I'm your host, Doug Donovan, founder and CEO of Interplay Learning. On today's show, my guest is Laura McCoolidge, Director of Strategic Investments at Strada Education. Laura, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Doug.
Well, there's a lot to cover, but let's start with Strada Education Network. It's a little daunting to have to try to describe everything that you do because you guys do so much, but maybe if you take a shot at it, that'll get us going.
Absolutely. So Strada is a national foundation, and as a whole, we are focused on helping organizations forge clearer pathways between education and work for learners. So we do that in a number of ways. Through our strategic investments, we invest in impact-aligned companies that are, working to further this mission in their own way, generally through tech innovation. We also do this through research and philanthropic activities.
And you're on the strategic investment side?
Yes.
I know that firsthand because
yes.
Strada is an investor in Interplay.
Yes.
So talk about I think on the website it talks about whom you serve, and it talks about the millions who are underserved by the traditional systematic post-secondary path. So walk us through that a little bit.
So we think a lot about adult learners, and these are learners that tended to have some sort of disruption in their education journey, and they tend to want to finish their education. They want to have more economic mobility. They would like to move into a better paying job that's perhaps a more stable income, but they need help and guidance getting back on that education path. So we think a lot about alternate pathways for people to utilize, to achieve their lifelong dreams.
Got it. Give us a couple examples. Like Interplay. At Interplay, we obviously provide training for skilled tradespeople. I'm sure we'll talk plenty about that, but maybe talk about some of your other investments and how they help maybe bridge that gap.
So one company that I'm particularly excited about is called PathStream. They offer short-term certificate programs that stack into degrees, so they are credentialed. And these are certificates that translate immediately into career opportunities that are in really high demand. So it could be Salesforce administration, Asana, things like that. So highly utilized tech platforms that people are being trained on. And they, with the demand these days and the labor shortages, the job opportunities are plentiful and the pay is really solid.
And is it, it's not in the face of, degrees are no good, we have to do something different. It sounds like a lot of this can be in concert with a degree pursuit. Is that right?
Oh, absolutely. If someone wanted to, pursue an associate's or a bachelor's degree after a certificate program like PathStream's, they definitely could. I think what I've come to appreciate in my work at Strada and with the portfolio over the last couple years is that one size does not fit all for learners, when it comes to their education to career journey. Yeah. And we have to be creative and we have to help think about alternate ways, to engage people and support them on that path.
So when you look at a EdTech company, right, like you're obviously, you're technically a venture investor, and so there's certainly returns you're looking for. But you guys seem impact first. So tell me a little bit about what you're measuring against, how you measure that, and what you're really looking for in bridging that gap.
It is a unique position to think about impact alongside venture capital, but I think it's really doable. And from my perspective, lasting impact means business models that work. And as an impact investor, we also have the opportunity to be patient investors because it takes a long time for good companies to grow and to be impactful. And we're willing to wait it out, along that journey. Some of the things that I think about when it comes to investments is, the company and the approach they're taking. What problem are they solving for specifically? Where's the burden of cost? Is it on the learner? Is it on the institution? how easily accessible is, the education or whatever solution they're providing to the market. And I'm keenly interested in founders right now who are throwing away the frameworks that we've had in the past in terms of education and those connections to work, and they're willing to innovate outside of those frameworks. I see a lot of innovation within the current system, but there are elements of the system that we could scrap and start over with the right innovation.
And I mean, the incremental change is one thing, but what you're looking for is
grand change.
And so do you guys have a thesis on like there's a major gap between point A and point B? Is there a point in this education to workforce system that you think is the most broken? Or you think there's still nobody's innovated very well from high school to post-secondary with that gap? Or, do we need to start in year 10 or 9th grade? Or, any thesis on where along this education to workforce path that you guys focus on?
There isn't a particular break point that we have honed in on necessarily. I would say holistically, anytime that something is opaque, it's not transparent, there tends to be a lot of breakdown and miscommunication. And I do feel like the transition of learner to employee is not clear for a lot of people. And so it's hard to understand where to begin on that path, what the end will look like. And I think the things that we've learned so far are that greater transparency in the journey and understanding the outcome and the skills gained is absolutely critical, along with coaching and guidance. That's shown to be highly effective in helping people just navigate all those life changes.
So I'm hearing a little bit of pulling the work into the education a little bit, or at least visibility into work. Like Strada uses the term earn and learn, right? And what I hear there is this is not educate, then work. It's woven together in different models to do that. Is that right?
Yes, I do believe that, while historically the U.S. hasn't focused on apprenticeships, for example, as a model that's highly utilized, I think that moving forward, work-integrated learning is going to be much more relevant in people's paths on education to career. I have come to a new level of appreciation that one size does not fit all in terms of education and career. Everyone has a different life, different expectations, and different ways of learning.
Yeah.
And now with even more tech-enabled learning opportunities, it's great to see how people can become more individualized in their path.
Have you seen, I think we're all tired of talking about COVID, but I would imagine you saw some acceleration inside of your portfolio companies or even system-wide because people were forced to do things differently. You talk about grand challenges. Can you, any particular examples you can think of where you saw that, other than Interplay?
I was just going to say, Interplay, I might flip it back to you, Doug. It was incredible to see Interplay's growth in the pandemic.
There was, especially with your mindset, which is you're asking a system to change holistically. And we had a collection of employers or even schools who said, this is the way you do hands-on learning. These are hands-on careers. You can only do it this way. It's the way it's always done. COVID obviously forced that to change. They said, well, we can't get together in a lab, or we can't get together in the back of our workplace where we typically train. How are we going to use this time? And we saw a lot of people, sometimes reluctantly, adopting technology for learning. And now we're on the other side of that, and we're really starting to see that they're coming back for more because they realized how powerful it was. And so there's a case where I don't think at the time we quite appreciated that catalyst that was happening. And I got to imagine we weren't alone in feeling that in the ed tech world.
Absolutely. A lot of companies saw growth, and schools also needed new solutions, to deliver students, a great education experience during the pandemic. It was a challenge for all of us, but it certainly started catalyzing a transformation in the industry, and I think it'll continue to happen.
There's been, I look at sometimes the classic post-secondary. We had an interesting conversation this morning with another person who said post-secondary education needs to have a broader definition. right? You're out of high school and there's all kinds of education that happens. The implication, of course, is post-secondary implies 4-year degree, et cetera. And they said, but there's all these other paths. Where do you see new models emerging relative to like certificate programs? Like, how do you see that happening?
As far as how do I see it shaping the landscape?
Yeah, like do you see any more like CTE, almost CTE at a post-secondary level, or more certificate stacking, or credential stacking, et cetera? Is there? I mean, it's always difficult to say what's the world look like out in 5-10 years, but are there some trends you see relative to degrees and certifications?
Absolutely. Certifications are becoming more broadly accepted. There's more programs available. I think that there is now more embracing of alternate pathways, on the education journey to work. I think employers are also doing a better job of questioning whether or not they really need someone with a bachelor's for a certain role.
Right.
What other qualifications or skills could an individual have that would enable them to be a successful fit, for them as an individual and also for the company in entering that position. So I think it has to come from both sides. I think we have to be flexible in terms of, this changing definition of what an education journey is after high school.
Yeah.
And employers need to be flexible in assessing what their needs really are for talent at the company.
That makes a lot of sense. You used it, one of the things you said early on was like, when assessing a company or an opportunity or a business model, you said, who's paying? Who's the payer? Is this a learner-burdened cost?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we certainly see at Interplay, the employer is taking on this cost now. They are buying, access to our platform that's benefiting their employees and their employees' development, et cetera. Do you see that more and more where employers are recognized, like, we can't sit on the sidelines, we have to start financing this cost?
Oh, absolutely. And especially when it comes to apprenticeship models and companies that are actively working with employers to build pipelines of talent that, these individuals in this apprenticeship style model are having much more hands-on experience. So they're much better equipped transitioning from student to employee.
Yeah.
And employers are getting significantly more hands-on when it comes to sourcing their talent needs. And I think a big driver of that is the shortages that we're all experiencing right now.
Yeah, we hear it a lot. We hear, business owners saying, I can't complain about the skills gap anymore. I just have to go solve it for myself or for my company.
Yes.
And in that case, they often end up, if they're in the electrical, plumbing, facility maintenance industry that we're in, they'll end up buying our solution, saying, look, this is a solution that I can build my own workforce. And are you seeing that in other, beyond the skilled trades? You see it in sort of, you talked about Salesforce training, or do you see that being employer-led a lot more now?
Yes. Employers are just becoming much more proactive in trying to grab, frankly, as much talent as they can right out the gate.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I think that they're just facing this perpetual shortage. And sadly, I hope it doesn't, but it could lead to more automation if we can't find, people to fill these roles that are vacant.
That's true.
Now, how many vacant positions are at Interplay right now?
Oh, geez, there's a constant list of 12 positions we're always hiring for. And
exactly.
One, with our growth, but two, you just, it's hard to find the talent that we're looking for all of them.
Every single portfolio company, when I connect with leadership, I have an ongoing list of all the hires that everyone is looking to make right now, and no one can find people.
And if we had, sort of short program solutions to try to take someone with some basic aptitude and say, geez, we can get you here in 6, 7 weeks, 8 weeks, like that would be incredibly valuable. Mm-hmm. So, at some level, you're saying you're starting to see a twisting of how education happens, where it's a lot more earn, learn. And you and I do it, right? I'm sure you have 2 books by your bedstand on better investing or whatever it is, like I do in terms of better managing or whatever. We're all earning and learning a lot more.
You have to. I think we need to look at education and work as more of just part of life's journey.
Yeah.
You really never stop learning or reskilling or upskilling yourself, and it's just a path of personal growth.
Has Strada met any institutional resistance, right? Like, you guys are saying, hey, let's reinvent a lot of this education to work path. And there's some vested interests that say, no, like, you need this 4-year degree or whatever. Have you guys found that at all, or is there more openness to it than perhaps previously?
I think there's a lot of openness to it.
Yeah.
One session that I sat in on yesterday was really compelling, and it focused on what Gen Z would like higher education institutions to know about this generation. And wow.
I wanted to attend that. And what were some of the highlights?
It was incredible. I wasn't planning on staying for the whole session, but I got hooked.
Yeah, like a good TikTok, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
and they talked about TikTok.
I'm sure they did.
Yes, but it was so informative and also inspiring. I do appreciate how this generation is really thinking about their approach to life. They've had access to technology that none of us have had before. So they are more used to using technology to support their learning activities. They'll go to YouTube to get help with an algebra problem. Their perspective is that a 60-minute or 90-minute lecture can probably be distilled down to 20 minutes.
Right.
And they appreciate more time to collaborate with classmates. They want more specific training that they have an understanding that leads to skills and outcomes.
Yeah.
They kind of want to see that. From my perspective, my takeaway from it was right out the gate. They want to know what they're driving towards. They also are much more financially conscious.
Yeah.
A lot of them had parents that were millennials and were saddled with student debt, and so they're keenly aware of, how much education can cost, and by nature of that, they want to see outcomes from that journey.
It's like a comparison to cable, right? We pay these cable bundle bills. That, you get everything from HGTV to ESPN, and you pay for all of it, right? But now what we're saying is, let's break it up. Here's Disney Plus over here. Here's Hulu over here. Here's whatever your flavor is, and
Exactly.
that disaggregation allows for sort of modularization and stacking things together.
That's a great way to look at it. It is like an unbundling
Yeah.
of that, historically traditional 4-year path that now could maybe be broken up between education and work.
That's right. And I think that serves broader communities naturally, right? Not many folks can, I don't know what the percentages are, but who can afford to go to a 4-year institution because of other kinds of life challenges?
Many.
So many. And can you start, incrementing there, and can you build pathways for success that aren't traditional?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think institutions are also aware that this generation is approaching life, career, education so much differently than in the past that adjustments
are they
have
as
to
money
happen.
motivated, or is it more about career development? What have you in that presentation, or if you've studied this before? I'm really interested in looking at a 19-year-old and thinking how do they think of their career versus me, my mother or my father. Do you have a sense of what their outcome is? Is it financial security? Is it, we say our worldview is at Interplay is better careers, better lives, right? So we do kind of anchor that careers are critical to a happy life.
So what I've read about this generation is that they are financially motivated, but it's not their key motivator. They want to feel more tied into a company's mission. They want to feel more values aligned with the things that they're doing. And, financial success is, I think, ideally for them, a byproduct of that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, Laura, this has been awesome. Thank you for joining me today.
So easy, Doug.
I want to do this again. Thank you very much. Let's
Thank
shake
you.
hands and for the camera. Thank you very much. Yes.
Oh, thanks, Doug.
Better careers, better lives.